Hi everyone, welcome back and thank you for your patience. The WNB crew here is doing an amazing job, and I think we have our technical difficulties figured out now. We're going to head back into Dr. Kramer's keynote address and pick up where we left off. Thank you.
Thank you for the warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Kramer, and I am a staff scientist and polar field engineer at New Mexico Tech. In tonight's talk, I'll start by discussing my path from a Westland High School ICEFR to my current role. I'll then discuss in detail some of my research conducted at MIT and the Massachusetts General Hospital on the sterilization, reuse, and inspection of N95 respirators. I'll conclude by discussing some of the lessons that I have learned from our coronavirus response that I hope to take forward as my professional focus shifts from the pandemic to the climate crisis. When I was competing in ICEF at 16 and 17, I had the idea that I wanted to pursue a career as a scientist and perhaps even to be a polar scientist. But I didn't really have any idea how one went about doing that, and both my parents were PhD scientists as well. So I want to share my story of how I got to my current role, in part to give you a little bit of background about who I am, and also to give you a sense of a path that one could take towards being a scientist. And I don't present the path that I have taken as the best possible path or even a particularly good one, but just to give you a sense of the sort of thing that people do pursuing careers in science. So I guess my tale really begins here in 2010 when I was in your shoes competing as an ICEFR. High school is a time to make mistakes, and that haircut does not look any better now than it did at the time. Nonetheless, I did well in ICEF. I won the Crest Fair twice, and then my senior year, I also won the State Fair, and then won my category at the International ICEF, which was environmental management. After that, I finished up high school and went on to study physics at Brown University. So this is me at my graduation with my folks and my grandma. During my time at Brown, I like to spend the semesters, focusing on my classes, but during the summers, I would work in research labs, first at OHSU and then also at MGH. And broadly, I was finding jobs and doing research in labs that were studying applications of engineering and physics to medicine. And part of my interest for that application of physics was my experience working as an EMT as well, which I did during the semester kind of as a way to make spending money, but ended up being a very impactful and very important part of my development, and something that I would encourage all of you to do as well. With those sort of two backgrounds in mind, this studying physics, this classical education in physics and engineering, and then this practical experience as a healthcare provider, I was very fortunate to, immediately after my graduation, get a Fulbright scholarship to India, where I worked at an eye hospital in southern India called Aravind Eye Hospital. Aravind Eye Hospital is famous for their ability to deliver very high quality care to very rural and very impoverished sections of southern India. And so the work that I did at Aravind Eye Hospital, in part, was developing tools that were applicable for this sort of rugged environment, but also studying the logistics and the pathways of setting up camps to treat cataracts and glaucoma when you're driving, 3-8 hours down dirt roads, and then seeing hundreds and hundreds of patients in the space of a day. And again, broadly, my work at Aravind was focused on the detection of glaucoma, which is the second leading cause of blindness in India. When I came back from, actually, even before I left India, I was applying to graduate schools. And when I came back from India, I chose to matriculate at the Harvard-MIT Division of Health Sciences and Technology. So HST, Health Sciences and Technology, HST is a joint program between MIT and Harvard Medical School. And in particular, I was pursuing the PhD in medical engineering and medical physics. This program takes about 20 students a year and has students with very, very diverse backgrounds and very diverse interests. And the way that this program is structured and the goals of this PhD program are to foster sort of a joint curriculum and a multidisciplinary curriculum. So just speaking for myself, I fulfilled the requirements for an electrical engineering PhD at MIT, but then also had about a year's worth of coursework, of medical school coursework, including 3 months of rotations, wearing a short white coat at the VA hospitals, actually assessing patients and being part of people's care teams. I was also a TA for a couple different classes, so I helped teach radiation biophysics and a class on infectious diseases. My thesis advisor throughout this whole process was a practicing radiologist, and the work that we were doing broadly was X-ray device design. So building tools for radiology, which is medical imaging, and primarily we were focused on a domain of medical imaging known as CT or CAT scanning. And what my PhD thesis was centered on was the development of this prototype device that was a non-rotating CT scanner, and one that was much more lightweight and much more portable than the existing technology. So basically my PhD is in making really, really small X-ray devices. And we hope that the work that we've done, and we've published some work, and actually we have a patent for our invention, will help bring medical imaging, and in particular neuroradiology, so the ability to image the brain, to rural and low-income communities, and then also to spaceflight. So a lot of the work that we did in developing these X-ray sources was done with the Goddard Space Flight Center, which is a NASA division centered in Maryland. And our hope is that as we start thinking about these long-distance space voyages to Mars and so forth, it would be very, very nice to have non-rotating and lightweight imaging systems. So that was sort of one aspect of my life, X-ray device design, science, medicine. But at the same time, I was trying to live this alternate life as a climber and a skier. Basically, I was spending all my free time either climbing rocks, climbing ice, climbing more rocks, writing about ice climbing, mountaineering. This actually started when I was in high school. Here's a picture of me when I was about 15, trying not to throw up on Hogsback Ridge. And then here's a picture of me at 26, doing a lot better, a little bit better shape. And in particular, out of kind of all of the disciplines of climbing, I have a particular fondness for ski mountaineering, which is carrying skis up a mountain and then using the skis to get down. So as I was nearing the end of my PhD, I was looking for a way to sort of tie these two lives together. Mountaineering ultimately is a very selfish pursuit, but I do think it gives you an ability to deal with cold, and also it gives you this intimate connection and knowledge of mountains and ice sheets and mountain weather. You want a clear example of climate change, look at the Elliott Glacier on Mount Hood. So seeing these sorts of things firsthand really inspired me to find a role that dealt with the effects of climate change more directly, and also allowed me to use the skills that I've developed in this selfish pursuit for the benefit of those around me. So I was very delighted to find the opening that I ended up getting here at New Mexico Tech, in which I'm developing seismology tools to track changes and also to study some volcanoes in Antarctica and Greenland. Obviously, things are a little up in the air. I'm speaking to you right now from New Mexico and Antarctica because of COVID, and we're not entirely certain what our upcoming Antarctic season is going to look like. But we're hopeful that we will still be deploying to Antarctica in this October, and then perhaps also to Greenland the following summer. So this is sort of the trajectory that my life was going in, and where I expected to be going in the last year of my PhD, dividing my time between X-ray research, outdoor hobbies, and then going towards this climate science role. But last March, as my life changed very dramatically, as I'm sure it did for all of you. And I want to talk a little bit about the work that we did as medical engineers and medical physicists to try to combat this new threat head on in the course of the last year. The pandemic first started in March. One of the first systems to fail were the supply chains providing personal protective equipment to healthcare providers. The pandemic also struck the Northeast corridor hardest and first before the rest of the country. So we really felt the brunt of COVID in March and April in the Boston area. At the time, being a fifth-year PhD student, many of my close friends were people who had started medical school 5 years previously and were now first-year residents on the front lines treating patients. So for the first time in my life, my research and the work that I did took on this really personal aspect, because I was now trying to figure out some way to use my skills and use my hard-won knowledge to protect people I knew and cared about. And that story was repeated throughout Boston and throughout New York. All of us who work sort of adjacent to healthcare providers were horrified at the lack of protection for our friends. And we were fairly desperate to do anything that we could in order to help them. In particular, we were interested in ways to extend the supply of N95 respirators, masks. So I'm going to take a step back here and discuss some definitions about different types of masks. There's three broad categories of masks. One are cloth masks, and these are what are recommended for the general public. They function mostly as source control of the disease. So when I wear a cloth mask and I cough, it absorbs many of the particles that I'm coughing. They've been shown quite well now to reduce the spread from the individual outwards, but their protective effect is fairly limited. A step up from that is the procedure mask or the surgical mask. These masks are mechanistically designed as a splash barrier, and so they're really trying to prevent fluids from the patient from getting into the provider's mouth. As it happens, a well-built surgical or procedure mask, if it's not a counterfeit, does have very good filtration as well. The Achilles heel of these procedure masks is that they don't form a seal with the user's face, so it's still possible for air to come in from the top or from the bottom or from the sides that's unfiltered. And the solution to that is the N95 filtering facepiece respirator, FFR. And so these are designed and reserved for healthcare workers who are in contact with infectious patients. They form a seal with the user's face, so all the air, if it's correctly fitted, all of the air that is coming in and out of that respirator is being filtered. And they have an excellent filtration. And part of my interest in looking at N95s in particular was that I had some experience with them. Working as an EMT, we had to go through the fit test per OSHA regulations, and occasionally we would use them for patients that we were concerned may transmit some sort of infectious disease. So what's in a name? What does N95 really mean? The N stands for non-oil resistant, and 95 means that 95% of particles are filtered through it. And the canonical definition is that that's 95% of 300 nanometer particles. In practice, a modern N95 FFR filters at that level or much higher, all the way down to 75 nanometers. And then a respirator, it means that all of the inhaled air is being filtered. how does an N95 work? So the structure and the kind of physical process by which an N95 respirator works is very similar also to the way that surgical masks work, and that they have a fiber layer, this fiber mesh that's sandwiched in between two hydrophobic barrier layers. This fiber layer, and there's an SEM photo of it here, is electrostatically charged. So you can see that the gaps between the fibers, here it's marked as 80 microns, that's much, much higher than the 75 nanometers at which it's capable of filtering to. So that means that the mechanism, the way that this fiber layer is filtering small particles is not a mechanical process. It's not like the particles are bouncing off of individual fibers. Instead, what it is that this fiber layer is charged, and this electrostatic charging allows it to attract the small particles that float through it. So the primary mechanism by which a surgical mask or an N95 FFR functions to filter small particulates is an electrostatic process. I should point out that both surgical masks and N95s are designed to be disposable. So in many ways, when we as scientists were sort of tasked with finding out ways to extend the supply of N95s, it shares some similarities to being asked to extend the supply of paper plates. You know, these things are designed to be used once, and it's very, very difficult to clean a paper plate to use it a second time. Just so with a surgical mask or an N95 FFR. So many different techniques have been looked at now over the last year. And incidentally, these techniques had been explored sort of in brief blips after the SARS-1 epidemic, the MERS epidemic, and the swine flu epidemic, but nothing had really been brought to completion. And if you're interested in ways to sterilize N95 respirators, or if you need this information professionally for your work, I would encourage you to first contact me. But also, there's an excellent summary at n95decon.org, which is an organization that I contribute to as well. And broadly, by this point, we've found out that there's some things that work very well. There's some things that don't work at all. And there's some things that work well, but for logistical issues, usually aren't worth it for an organization. So being someone with a background in radiation physics, the first technique that I was sort of brought in to look at was ionizing radiation. And I'll discuss the study that we did and what we learned. But ionizing radiation does not work. And so after that, we looked at a chemical process, hydrogen peroxide, which did work fairly well. So for any technique of N95 sterilization, you need to be able to show that your technique is working. And that means that you have to, firstly, show that you can inactivate viral particles. Basically, are you killing the coronaviruses that are stuck to that mask or not? Secondly, is your sterilization technique affecting the filtration efficiency of the respirator? Because if it's ruining it, then there's no point in washing it, because then you no longer have a filtering respirator. And thirdly, is it affecting the seal? So basically, is it affecting the way this respirator can attach to the user's face? So this was a setup that we developed with my colleagues at MIT Nuclear Science, where we used an optical particle counter to look at the efficiency of any sort of inserted filter layer. So as I mentioned, I studied X-rays. So the first thing we looked at is gamma radiation. And there were a couple compelling reasons for why we thought gamma radiation would be a good choice. Firstly, in March and April of 2020, there were no elective treatments. And this meant that many people's cancer treatments had been postponed, which meant that there were many, many sources of gamma radiation and also electron beams that were just sort of sitting idle in hospitals. So it was a tool that was already in-house to hospitals, and it was a tool that was sitting idle. Secondly, gamma radiation is already widely in use for sterilization. Most of the food that we eat has been sterilized by gamma radiation. All of the mail that goes through the District of Columbia has been sterilized either by electron beam or by gamma radiation. And it has like really compelling applications in industrial imaging as well. Gamma radiation is just a funny way of saying really, really energetic photons. So the same particles that mediate visible light or your radio wave. They do not turn a material radioactive. So if you expose yourself to a lot of gamma radiation, you can give yourself cancer, but you yourself won't become radioactive. And of course, the story of Hulk could never happen. So the less said about that, the better. So we looked at 3 different types of 3M respirators, and we used a cobalt-60 source. So there's 2 ways of generating gamma rays. One is with a linear accelerator, and one is with a nuclear source. The end product is the same. In hospitals, they use linear accelerators these days for cancer treatment reasons. But at MIT, we had access to a cobalt-60 source, so that's what we used. And from the literature, actually from data from the original SARS crisis, we knew roughly how much radiation was required to inactivate a coronavirus. And we knew that 10 kilograys, which is a unit of radiation dose, would be sufficient to sterilize respirators. And in some ways, this was like the ultimate science fair project, because you had everybody at Harvard and everybody at MIT, limitless resources. It just had to be done like in a week. So I got my car, I picked up respirators from my colleague at Brigham and Women's Hospital. I drove them over to MIT, handed them off to the nuclear engineers. They stuck them in the respirator, and like a day later, we had our results. And the results were that the gamma radiation did not affect the ability of these masks to form a seal, but they dramatically decreased the filtration efficiency of these respirators. That's because the gamma radiation was discharging that electrostatically charged fiber layer that does most of the hard work in an N95. And we saw the most dramatic decrease that we saw was at 300 nanometers. And here's our data. At the larger sizes, the effect of the gamma radiation was far less detrimental than it was at the small sizes. And unfortunately, since then, there's still some debate about this, but it's believed that there is sort of a mode of infectious coronavirus droplets right around that 3 micron, 300 nanometer range. So all of this to say, gamma radiation was not going to cut it. Yeah. So with that in mind, we turned to ionized hydrogen peroxide. Ionized hydrogen peroxide, similar to gamma radiation, had some compelling logistical advantages. The Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, which was across the street from Harvard Medical School, where I received, a good fraction of my training, had an IHP system just sitting there. It's used for the animal research facility. Many of the animals that they're doing research on are immunocompromised. So anything entering the facility or exiting the facility needs to be sterilized. And the other advantage is that this is a room-sized chamber. So you could very quickly sterilize hundreds and hundreds or thousands of respirators, and not just respirators, but other forms of PPE, face shields, certain kinds of gowns, and so forth. And basically what we did was repeat the same testing protocol that we had developed for the gamma radiation study at MIT. We exposed the respirators to the treatment, not just once, but several times. And then we tested their ability to form a seal with human faces. And then we also tested their filtration efficiency using the optical particle counter at MIT Nuclear Science. Because this time we had positive results, not just negative results, we had those results confirmed because in order for the system to be put in use, healthcare providers need more assurance than just one study. So we had the filtration efficiency, our results confirmed through independent testing at a NIOSH pre-approval facility in Ohio. And what we found is that there was no degradation of the filtration efficiency from the treatment. There was also no degradation of the filtration efficiency, of the fit ability of the respirators from the sterilization treatment. It's a 100-minute cycle to perform the sterilization, and could fit hundreds of respirators inside it. This is out of date. The supply chain system has eased, but for a while they were doing up to 500 respirators a day. Up to 500 respirators a week. And if they had needed to, if things had gotten really bad, they could have sterilized 2,000 respirators a day. We saw no effect on the performance of these respirators at up to 10 cycles of treatment. In practice, if a respirator is used that many times, that many 8 or 12-hour shifts, it tends to break down just from the mechanical processes of being worn, and not from anything to do with the sterilization. So that's me standing next to a basket, a wireframe shelf. Each of those paper bags contains a healthcare provider's respirator that was sterilized that morning. Those little lunch bags were then put in cardboard boxes and delivered to each floor. And this is what it looks like in use. You get this sort of creepy fog. And as you can see, they're also using them to sterilize face shields, and then also hoods for power-to-air purifying respirators, which are called PAPRs. When we were running the tests on that wire rack in the treatment room, we would put little biological indicators that allowed us to confirm that a sterilizing dose of the IHP had reached kind of every nook and cranny. So seeing those sterilized respirators that would go out to actual providers like a few minutes later was one of the most satisfying moments of my whole career, of my whole life, because I could feel in some small way that I had contributed to providing our colleagues across the street with respirators when otherwise they wouldn't have had one. Now that the supply chain system has gotten a little bit better, there are now enough respirators that sterilization is not really widely used anywhere in the US. Broadly, and we found this in other sites that had implemented similar processes confirmed this, there was about a 10% attrition. So for every 10 respirators that you put in to be reused, one would break. Usually that was the straps breaking during being worn. But the other way that respirators fail is that providers get fluids from the patient kind of splashing on them, or the providers themselves were bleeding or oozing because these respirators do create these ulcers on your face onto the respirator. But that had nothing to do with the sterilization. And the data from that we collected were used for an emergency use authorization application. I want to also share a little story about counterfeit respirators, because this is also something else we looked at. Using that same system that we had developed and set up at MIT, we started testing donated surgical masks and donated respirators that had been given to the major hospitals, because we had no idea where these respirators and surgical masks were coming from. And what we found was that their performance was all over the place, and many of them were actually so bad that they emitted more particles than they received. And my guess for why that happened was that these are counterfeit respirators that were assembled somewhere with a higher level of air pollution. So when they were tested in Cambridge air, they just sort of spat out some stuff. In any case, that is bad news bears. And this issue of identifying counterfeit respirators became a major focus of our group. So I came across this picture one morning, I think in June, and I happened to have that same respirator on the left on my own desk. And I knew that respirator was a counterfeit. We had tested it ourselves, but also the markings on it do not comply with the NIOSH regulations for how an N95 respirator should be marked. So I'm seeing this article from this trusted news source that I quite like, and then and knowing that they're displaying an image of a counterfeit, and that very few people actually at that point knew that this was a counterfeit, because there had been very little study into their efficiency and into kind of the influx of counterfeit respirators into the U.S. at that point. So I wrote an email expecting to get ignored to the editor. Next thing I know, the editor called me up and said, okay, can you, first of all, right now, send me a picture of a real respirator? So that picture on the left, which is in an NPR article that came out on July 1st, I took, and that's my desk, and you can like see all the crap that I hadn't cleaned off of it. And then I was interviewed for this larger article about this issue regarding KN95s in particular, and how the KN95 performance kind of varies quite wildly. So that was a startling experience, and not something at all that I expected. I think it is impossible to fairly discuss the events of the last year without some mention of COVID denial. I knew to expect denialism in climate science, but I felt blindsided and personally devastated by the waves of COVID denialism that swept the country in the last year. Many of our colleagues were threatened for their work. I personally know doctors and scientists, including my own mother, who were seriously ill for months with COVID infections, and by now some 1,300 American healthcare providers have lost their lives. Yet the claims that COVID is a hoax have gained traction throughout our society and was for a time even parroted by the government. Hearing this denialism echoed again and again not only made me feel like I had failed somehow, but cheapened the loss and the suffering that the medical and scientific communities had gone through. I think it is important to remember that denialism of difficult facts is not simply an American trait, but a human one, and repeated throughout history. We've seen it with the HIV epidemic, we've seen it with the climate crisis, and we'll certainly see it again. The impulse to deny climate change, as the air is thick and choked with the ashes of the Olympic rainforest, is paralleled in the impulse to wish away a devastating pandemic in hopes of political opportunity. I'm speaking to you now at what we hope is the beginning of the end of the COVID crisis. It's important to recognize that science alone isn't enough. Ethics, action, and advocacy are needed to ensure that the results of scientific advancement are equitably distributed. But in the last year, we have also seen a dramatic demonstration of the role that science and scientists can play in combating an existential threat. We've seen the development of a new category of wildly successful vaccines in only a few months, the widespread and rapid sequencing of viral genetic material. We've seen new protocols for the treatment of COVID, and a dramatic effort by the global community to extend the supply of PPE. In some ways, it may feel like we can't win as scientists, because there will always be outside factors that blunt the maximum positive effect that our findings could have. But I urge you not to let that discourage you. In some ways, working in science, we can't lose. There's a reason they named the Mars rover Perseverance. Whatever difficulties, failures, or opposition we may face as individuals, our findings, both positive and negative, advance the sphere of human understanding and give the broader society tools to survive and to thrive. It's an exhilarating and a rewarding career, and I wish you all the best of luck as you go forward in it.
Dr. Kramer. So just to question out of curiosity. Danielle was talking a little bit about how you kind of switched from being like biomedical engineering based to polar scientist. I was just wondering what specifically made that change for you? Like, why did you choose that?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked. So outside of work, I'm a climber and a backcountry skier, and I've spent a lot of time in the last 10 years climbing and skiing. I climbed Mount Hood when I was in high school and skied down from Hogsback Ridge, and kind of all through grad school, I was doing this sort of thing, living this like alternate life. And I was finding that I was taking bigger and bigger risks, and it was getting harder and harder for me to justify the mountaineering that I was doing. So I really wanted the skills that I had developed, through my mistakes and close calls, to be useful to other people somehow. And I've also always had an interest in environmental science. My ICEF project was an environmental management project. I've always had an interest in climate change and in the human health effects of climate change. So I was very fortunate to find the role that I'm in, because it was a sort of this unique confluence of both my like ski mountaineering skills and my electrical engineering training for a cause and an issue that I care really, really deeply about.
So in the two papers about the sterilization of respirators that Danielle shared with us, I noticed that you had multiple co-authors from many different institutions and like even internationally distant. So how important was like the collaboration in your research and then also just your education too?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my PhD program was a joint program. So basically everybody that I worked with and sometimes it seems like everyone in the city of Boston has multiple affiliations. And one of the reasons that I was drawn to the PhD program that, at this joint program between Harvard and MIT was that it really fostered these connections between clinicians and engineers. And I think that a lot of the reason that we were able to have some modicum of success with the respirator sterilization was that we had both engineers and clinicians working together from the get-go. And I think that's really, really important to not be siloed in different corners of academia, especially in healthcare. It's, the fact that like, basically in the same building, even in normal times, have like nuclear engineers sitting right next to clinicians, meant that we were able to do some things and to get things right and to have understanding of how the tools that we were developing would be used in the clinic. That sort of understanding is hard to build without a multidisciplinary team. And multidisciplinary training as well.
How, like, with everything that's going on in the world, do you stay hopeful, and how do we like engage people who aren't hopeful, like in our science and in our work?
Sure. So I should start off by saying that I am not like a seismologist. I'm not a climate scientist. The work that I'm doing is in support of these experiments. I'm developing the tools that the professors at universities are using, but I'm not like collecting the data. I'm not interpreting the data for the climate science itself. That being said, you don't need to be a atmospheric or physical scientist to be depressed and to be concerned about the way things are going. And climate change aside, I think there's been no shortage of very dismal news in the last year. I distinctly remember a moment, must have been in October, where there was still these incredible shortages of PPE. 1,200 healthcare providers in the US had died. I knew people who were sick, who were been disabled, young, healthy people who have been disabled for months by COVID. And you have the administration at the time talking about, retweeting these theories that physicians had made up COVID so that they could bill extra for it. That was incredibly demoralizing. And we'd been working so hard for months and months. And when MIT graduate students are tell you they're working hard, like we were really working hard, and being undercut. It's a good question, and it's something to think about. There's a couple things that give me hope. One is that there's no shortage of smart and capable people, and I'm sure you all fall into that category, who are tackling these issues and who are trying really, really hard. And the second thing, I think, as a scientist, you're contributing to this body of knowledge about the way that our universe works, and that doesn't go away. The things that we've discovered and the things that we have published are now in public record, and they're published open access, so they'll be in public record forever. There's going to be another zoonotic pandemic, maybe in 10 years, maybe in a century. They'll be able to look at the work that we did, and they'll be better prepared for it. That gives me a lot of faith as well.
What was the rigor like when you were studying biomedical engineering? Did you have time to climb and ski like you mentioned, or did that kind of have to take a backseat during that time?
I made time.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have like the best grades, but I made it work. Yeah, I don't want to be too much of a bad influence, but at some point you have to take care of yourself. And I found that I was more productive if I was getting exercise every single day. I was more productive if I was, getting out in the mountains. And so I made it work. Was there a trade-off? Maybe, maybe I would have had more papers. So I just stayed inside and worked all the time. But it's not who I am.
A lot of us here, or all the students here, are seniors, and all of the ISEF participants will eventually head off to college or some future career path.
Yep.
Do you have any practical advice for us students as we venture on to our next place?
I don't know that you want my advice. I mean, I don't have advice so much as I have a request, which is I hope that whatever you do in college or in your education thereafter, you're looking for and finding ways to protect the underserved and to elevate the voices of the historically marginalized, and to protect those around you. What helps me kind of meet my gaze in the mirror is knowing that I've at least tried, at least tried my damnedest to protect or to make the world a healthier and safer place. That's far more important than, accolades or papers or patents. And I think you'll find far more satisfaction, just putting in the effort to protect those around you and those who are historically marginalized and underserved. I think that's more important than anything else. I'd also say you should participate in the civic process. When you turn 18, first of all, find out who your representatives are, both in DC and in Salem, and write to them. And when you turn 18, vote, and don't just vote every 4 years, but vote in the primaries and vote in the municipal elections. Most of what gets done in this country happens at the state and municipal level, and just statistically as a voter, that's where you're going to have the most impact. And you can start by writing to your reps before you turn 18. You don't need to wait for that.
Thank you, Dr. Kramer. It was a pleasure having you back at Wilsonville School District. At this time, we will transition to our awards ceremony. But before we present our awards, we would like to offer some well-deserved appreciations. First, thank you to all of you who are attending this Crest Jane Goodall Science Symposium. Your support of the sciences and our students is greatly valued and appreciated. Next, thank you to our science teachers. From kindergarten through grade 12, our science teachers have fostered curiosity, critical thinking, inquiry, attention to rigor, organization, and methodology, along with opportunity to work in groups, problem solve, reason, present, and defend ideas. All of these skills find themselves not only useful and critical in scientific thinking and research, engineering and mechanics, but in every sphere of life and every career path. We also especially thank our high school science teachers who helped our students this year with their projects. Thank you to our 40 judges who donated their Saturday to interview students. And we offer our thanks and appreciation to our amazing community partners and local businesses. You can see them listed on the virtual program, who have donated time, expertise, and equipment to support our students' inquiries. Of course, we thank each of our students' families who have supported their children's efforts along the way, especially those of you who let your students bring home fruit flies. And I wish to thank our school board and school leaders for continuing to support and prioritize this annual science symposium. We especially wish to thank our amazing and incredibly dedicated science fair staff. Danielle Grenier Schroeder, our ISEF director. Ellen Ha, our ISEF judge coordinator. Mark Parrish, our middle school ISEF coordinator. Thank you, each of you, for all of your time and many, many hours towards the symposium. And now let's recognize the tremendous work done by our students this year.
Hello, ISEFers all over the district. I must say, it isn't the same without us all together in the exhibit hall, but I'm sure glad that we get to celebrate you tonight. I hope that you all enjoyed hearing from Dr. Kramer and from your classmates. For those of you who I haven't met yet, my name is Danielle Grenier Schroeder, and I'm the fair director. It has been my greatest honor to work with your students this year, and there is not enough time in the world to explain all the ways that they have triumphed in the face of difficulty. I shared this with the students and judges last Saturday, but I want to share this with everyone now. It's the word moonshot. A moonshot, in a technology context, is an ambitious, exploratory, and groundbreaking project undertaken without any expectation of near-term profitability or benefit, and also perhaps without a full investigation of potential risks and benefits. Google describes all of their secret projects as moonshots, and they've included things like VR glasses and driverless cars. In their mind, a moonshot project addresses a huge problem, uses breakthrough technology, and proposes a radical solution. Moonshot has been the vibe of 2020, 2021, and I am ready to share with you the results of tonight's science fair experience. Let's not waste another moment in anticipation. And now for the award ceremony for the Crest Jane Goodall Science Symposium. We'll begin with the ISEF Regional Special Awards. Our first award is the Outstanding Project in Atmospheric Science, sponsored by the American Meteorological Society. They award a certificate of outstanding achievement for creative scientific endeavor in the areas of atmospheric and related oceanic and hydrological sciences. Each year, the AMS publishes the names of science fair winners in the December issue of the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society. This year, our winners are Cameron Lau and Evelyn Knight and Sophie Yonker. Our next award is the Outstanding Project in Psychology, sponsored by the American Psychological Association. This award includes a certificate recognizing outstanding research in the category of behavioral and social sciences or any category related to psychology. This year, our winners are Madeline Santoso and Ava Seacrest. Up next is our most outstanding exhibit in materials science. The project that receives this award demonstrates exceptional use of materials-related concepts in some aspect of the materials paradigm, structure, processing, properties, and performance relationships. The winner of this award receives a certificate and a ribbon. This year, our winners are Linnea Collette and Jaden Sherry. Our next award is the Award for Geoscience Excellence. The female recipients of this award receive a certificate, which recognizes projects that, in the opinion of judges, exemplify the high standards and innovativeness and scientific excellence in the geosciences. The winner is Keonia Afonen. The next award is the Biophysics Award. The Biophysics Award, sponsored by the Biophysical Society, applies the power of physics, chemistry, and math to understanding health, preventing disease, and inventing cures. The recipient of this award receives a certificate and $100. Our winners are Anish Goswami. The next award, the Mu Alpha Theta Award certificate, is for the individual or group project that demonstrates the most challenging, original, thorough, and creative investigation of a problem involving mathematics. This year's winners are Cameron Lau and Evelyn Knight. The next award is the NASA Earth Systems Science Award. This award certificate is given to the project that best demonstrates insight into Earth's interconnected systems. The project incorporates studies of the different components of Earth systems, their interactions, and their evolution over time. Our award winners are Chaya Valuri and Alexis Gessler. The next award is the Taking the Pulse of the Planet Award. This award honors one project selected from among all the general award categories whose research emphasizes NOAA's mission of science, service, and stewardship to understand and predict changes in climate, weather, oceans, and coasts, to share that knowledge and information with others, and to conserve and manage coastal and marine ecosystems and resources. This year's award winner is Hayden Weyerman and Caitlin Pelletier and Mabel Napick. The next award is the Naval Science and Engineering Award, which recognizes 4 exceptional projects. The Office of Naval Research is pleased to support the education of future scientists and engineers of America and presents each project with a $50 gift certificate. Our award winners are Mithun Karthikeyan, Ava Seacrest, Maura Schramm, and Ayushi Malik. Our next award is the Excellence in Scientific Research in Environmental Health. This award, sponsored by the Oregon Environmental Health Association, recognizes a student who helps promote environmental health and safety with a certificate and $60. The award winner is Grace Sato. The next award is the Sustainable Development Award. RICO USA provides a certificate which recognizes projects that demonstrate a technical innovation that offers the greatest potential for increasing our ability to grow environmentally friendly and socially responsible businesses. This year, our winners are Riley Heinonen and Avery McCurry and Kalia Reckenberg. Our next award is the Outstanding Achievement for Ability and Creativity in Vitro Biology Award. This award recognizes the best 11th grade student exhibiting in the areas of plant or animal in vitro biology or tissue culture. A formal letter of congratulations will be sent, and publicity of the winner's achievements will be included in the Society's online newsletter. This year, our winners are Benjamin McClelland, Benjamin Pinoli, and Jacob McClelland. The next award is the USAID Science Champion Award. The U.S. Agency for International Development is pleased to offer one Science Champion Award certificate to recognize an exceptional project that has the potential to make an impact on addressing international development challenges. This year, our winners are Kalia Reckenberg and Yaya Kiss. The next award is the Best Use of the Metric System Award, sponsored by the U.S. Metric Association. It is a certificate to recognize the project that has used metric measures and expresses those measures consistently and correctly. This year, our winners are Isabella Scalise and Angelina Scalise and Aditi Bhaskar. The next award is Outstanding Science or Engineering Fair Project, sponsored by the U.S. Air Force. The Air Force Research Laboratory is proud to support science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This certificate recognizes projects with Air Force applicability in science and technology. This year, our winners are Jahan Jia and Wenwen Q and Jacob Connor. Our next award is the U.S. Regional Stockholm Junior Water Prize. The Stockholm Junior Water Prize, sponsored by the Water Environment Federation, is awarded to the best water-related project at the fair. It is aimed at enhancing the quality of life through improvement in water quality, water resource management, or water and wastewater treatment. The recipients of this prize get a certificate, a free year-long membership to the WEF, and the opportunity to apply to the state-level WEF competition. Our winners are Anna Nielsen and Sophia Nielsen, Jacob Rice, Sophie Yonker, Hayden Wireman, Grace Sato, and Jack Cunningham and Lorelei Cunningham. The next award is the Yale Science and Engineering Association Most Outstanding 11th Grade Exhibit Project. Yale offers a certificate and a medallion awarded to the two best 11th grade computer science, engineering, physics, or chemistry projects. This year, our winners are Ahmed Zaidan and Jacob Rice. Now on to the CREST Special Awards. Our first CREST Special Award is the Best Project Display. The Best Project Display is organized, lacks errors, draws readers in, and is comprehensive. This year, in our new digital format, the winners are Isabella Scalise and Angelina Scalise, and Linnea Collette and Jaden Sherry. Our next award is the Noteworthy Logbook. The Noteworthy Logbook contains documentation of a project's process from beginning to end, and evidence that the logbook has been used throughout the project. Logbook documentation of thought process, of student inspiration, and trials and tribulations for all phases of the project is important. This year, our winner is Uma Grover. The next award is the Green Chemistry Award, which recognizes a project that has addressed the area of sustainable chemistry with emphasis on reducing chemical waste or remediating hazardous substances. This year, our winner is Bo Dixon. The next award is the Promising Young Scientist. This award goes to the 9th grade students who present thoughtful, well-conducted experiments that show promise of greater things to come. Each project that receives this award wins a $25 check made possible thanks to generous support from community members. Our winners are Haley Ray Newbor and Emmeline Staten, Bodie Holland, Devin Laguerre, and Jameson Holgren, Timothy Wieland, Bo Dixon, Natalie Jones and Natalie Smith, Caroline Nielsen, Cassidy Jorg, and Sophia Levesque. The Best Experimental Design Award is given to the project which demonstrates the best practices of experimental design. This award comes with a $25 cash prize from a generous community partner. Our winners are Sarah Gordon and Sophie Gordon. The next award is the Most Creative Project Idea. The Most Creative Project Award goes to a project that takes a unique approach to solving a scientific or technical problem and makes use of readily available materials to collect data or address a need. This award comes with a $25 cash prize from a generous community sponsor. Our winners are Cameron Lau and Evelyn Knight. The next award is the Intelligent Machines Award. It recognizes a student who visually and verbally conveys how their project involving intelligent machines or artificial intelligence will improve the human experience. This award comes with a $25 cash prize from an anonymous community partner. Our winner is Anish Goswami. The next award is the Paul Sherman Award for Enthusiasm. The students who receive the Paul Sherman Award express passion and enthusiasm for their project in scientific and/or engineering research. The winners receive a $25 gift card to Powell's Books. This year, our winners are Cassidy Jorg and Sophia Levesque, Caroline Nielsen, and Timothy Wieland. The next award is the Best Use of Statistical Analysis Award, which recognizes a student who conveys an exceptional understanding and interpretation of the results of their statistical analyses. The two projects who receive the certificate also receive a brand new Texas Instruments 84 graphing rechargeable calculator. Our winners are Masha Galtseva and Yaya Kiss. The next award is the Best Multidisciplinary Research Award, which is given to a project that demonstrates outstanding achievement, combining two or more distinct scientific or engineering disciplines, synthesizing these different perspectives to provide a more whole system approach to a problem. The project that receives this award gets a certificate and $125, thanks to an anonymous community partner. The winner is Nathan Rumsey. The next award is the Women in Engineering Award. This award is given to a project that demonstrates excellence in applied engineering in any field by a female student. This award comes with a $125 gift certificate, thanks to a generous community sponsor. Our winners are Linnea Collette and Jaden Sherry. We are now on to the very special awards. This year, our very special awards include an OSU General Scholarship. Oregon State University recognizes 2 exceptional students in any category with a scholarship. This scholarship is a $2,000 one-time general scholarship, and this year it is being awarded to Zoe Black and Avery McCormick. We'll now proceed on to the category awards. This year, in the category of behavioral science, we viewed and celebrate the work of Masha Galtseva, Julianne Ellsworth, Savannah Staten, Addison Sabota, Ava Sechrist, Peyton Miller, Ella Weeks, Lucinda Fine, Alexis Nord, Madeline Santoso, Jeffrey Fang, and Summer Tan. The honorable mention in behavioral science goes to Julianne Ellsworth and Savannah Staten. The third place award in behavioral science goes to Masha Galtseva. The second place award in behavioral science goes to Summer Tan and Jeffrey Fang. And finally, the first place in behavioral science goes to Madeline Santoso. Congratulations to all students who competed in the behavioral science category. Our next category is computer sciences and robotics. This year, our competitors were Nathan Rumsey, Ayushi Malik, Lorelei Cunningham, Jack Cunningham, Jacob Connor, and Anish Goswami. The honorable mention in this category goes to Jacob Connor. Third place in computer science and robotics goes to Ayushi Malik. Second place goes to Nathan Rumsey. And finally, First place in computer sciences and robotics goes to Anish Goswami. Congratulations all who competed in computer sciences and robotics. Our next category is environmental and earth sciences. Our competitors were Anna Nielsen, Sophia Nielsen, Mabel Napick, Caitlin Pelletier, Ellie Counts, Timothy Wieland, Chaya Valuri, Sophie Yonker, Kalia Reckenberg, Evelyn Knight, and Cameron Lau. The honorable mention in environmental and earth sciences goes to Kalia Reckenberg. Third place in environmental and earth sciences goes to Cameron Lau and Evelyn Knight. Second place in environmental and earth sciences goes to Ellie Counts. And finally, first place in the category of environmental and earth sciences goes to Anna Nielsen and Sophia Nielsen. Congratulations all. Our next category is energy and environmental engineering. The students competing in this field were Grace Sato, Uma Grover, Zoe Black, Avery McCormick, Hayden Wireman, Jacob Rice, Sophia Levesque, Cassidy Yorg, Aditi Bhaskar, and Hyonya Afanan. Our honorable mention goes to Cassidy Yorg and Sophia Levesque. Third place is awarded to Uma Grover. Second place is awarded to Grace Sato. And finally, first place in the category of energy and environmental engineering goes to Aditi Bhaskar. Congratulations. The next category is electrical and mechanical engineering. Our competitors were Ahmed Zaidan, Thomas Ullman, Oakland Hill, Jesse Hayworth, Bodie Holland, Jameson Holgren, Devin Laguerre, Cooper Berggren, Cade Holland, Drayton Nims, and Thomas Pierce. The honorable mention in this category goes to Bodie Holland, Devin Laguerre, and Jameson Holgren. Third place is awarded to Ahmed Zaidan. Second place is awarded to Drayton Nims and Thomas Pierce. And finally, first place in the category of electrical and mechanical engineering is awarded to Cooper Berggren and Cade Holland. Congratulations to all competitors in electrical and mechanical engineering. Our next category is bioengineering and materials science. Our competitors were Anna Lay, Laura Smith, Linnea Collette, Jaden Sherry, Haley Ray Newbor, and Emmeline Staten. Third place in this category goes to Laura Smith and Anna Lay. Second place is awarded to Haley Ray Newbor and Emmeline Staten. And finally, first place in the category of bioengineering and materials science goes to Linnea Collette and Jaden Sherry. Our next category is life sciences, and our participants this year were Mithun Karthikeyan, Sarah Hardwick. Actually, let's start this over because my mouse is sitting right in the middle of the screen. Your screen. Okay, here we go.
I don't see it.
you can't see it, but I'm sure, but it may come through on mine. So,
all right.
The next category is life sciences. This year, our competitors were Mithun Karthikeyan, Sarah Hardwick, Riley Heineman, Avery McCurry, Sarah Gordon, Sophia Gordon, Kasara Fitzke, Yaya Kiss, Carly Shanklin, Alexis Gessler, Dina Rosa Biggs, Nicole Beltman, Jessica Connor, and Bo Dixon.
The honorable mention in this category goes to Dina Rosa Biggs. Third place in this category is awarded to Jessica Connor and Nicole Beltman. Second place in this category goes to Mithun Karthikeyan. And finally, first place in the category of life sciences goes to Yaya Kiss. Congratulations to all who competed in life sciences. And our competitors in the category of medicine and health sciences were Melania Kitsis, Koharu Sakiyama, Evgenia Kitsis, Gracelyn Dunham, Natalie Jones, Natalie Smith, Noah Eddy, Nolan Rapp, Sarthak Samir Asita, and Olivia Tenio. The honorable mention in this category goes to Gracelyn Dunham. Third place in this category goes to Koharu Sakiyama. Second place is awarded to Olivia Tenio. And finally, first place in the category of medicine and health sciences goes to Nolan Rapp and Sarthak Samir Asita. In the invertebrate and in vitro biology category, our competitors were Caroline Nielsen, Ashley Chan, Kendall McDonald, Kari Veik, Paul Liu, Noor Shaheen, Madeline Bellandine, Audrey Kehoe, Allison Keller, Kiara Gia, Wenwen Q, Alice Kang, Jacob McClelland, Benjamin Panoli, Isabella Scalise, Angelina Scalise, and Maura Schramm. And the honorable mention in this category goes to Alice Kang. Third place in this category is awarded to Maura Schramm. Second place in this category is awarded to Isabella Scalise and Angelina Scalise. And finally, first place in the category of invertebrate and in vitro biology goes to Benjamin McClelland, Benjamin Panoli, and Jacob McClelland. Congratulations all. That concludes our category awards. Now we will announce the team advancing to the Northwest Science Expo. These students have been selected to represent our district at the state level science fair, the Northwest Science Expo. At this fair, our students will have the opportunity to compete for additional scholarships, prizes, and recognition. Our winners are Masha Galtseva, Julianne Ellsworth and Savannah Staten, Madeline Santoso, Summer Tan and Jeffrey Fang, Nathan Rumsey, Ayushi Malik, Jacob Connor, Anish Goswami, Laura Smith and Anna Lay, Linnea Collette and Jaden Sherry, Haley Ray Newbor and Emmeline Staten, Ahmed Zaidan, Bodie Holland, Devin Laguerre and Jameson Holgren, Cooper Berggren and Cade Holland, Drayton Nims and Thomas Pierce, Grace Sato, Uma Grover, Cassidy Yorg and Sophia Levesque, Aditi Bhaskar, Alice Kang, Benjamin McClelland, Benjamin Panoli and Jacob McClelland, Isabella Scalise and Angelina Scalise, Maura Schramm, Mithun Karthikeyan, Yaya Kiss, Dina Rosa Biggs, Jessica Connor and Nicole Beltman, Koharu Sakiyama, Gracelyn Dunham, Nolan Rapp and Sarthak Samir Asita, Olivia Tenio, Anna Nielsen and Sophia Nielsen, Ellie Counts, Kalia Reckenberg, and finally Cameron Lau and Evelyn Knight. We look forward to competing with you on April 9th, 2021 at the Northwest Science Expo. And finally, now for those advancing to the Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair, a gathering of more than 1,500 students from around the world to share and celebrate the magic of discovery and invention. Students nominated to ISEF are the best that our regional fair has to offer, and they will represent the Westland Wilsonville School District on the international stage. They will join Team Oregon, and we will cheer you on as you compete for hundreds of thousands of dollars in scholarship and cash prizes, as well as recognition by global organizations. And finally, the best of fair winners are Anish Goswami, Aditi Bhaskar, Madeline Santoso, and Lania Colette and Jaden Sherry. So many congratulations to all of our science fair competitors. May we all join together to celebrate the 4 projects moving on to the International Science and Engineering Fair.
Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. I'd like to remind all students that we're going to have a drive-through celebratory souvenir pickup on Thursday, March 11th from 4 to 6 p.m. at Wilsonville High School. Even if you didn't win an award tonight, you have items to claim. And now I'd like to issue some final thanks to Dr. Avilash Kramer for his amazing keynote address. I'd like to thank all the families who have supported their students all along, the science teachers on all campuses who inspire students every day, Dr. Ludwig and the school board for their continued support of the Science Fair program. Special thanks to the Wilsonville Broadcast Network, in particular, Emmy Bishop and John Fitzgerald, who made this whole thing possible. Thanks to the CREST staff who donate so much of their time and attention to the fair. And finally, to Ellen Ha, our judge coordinator, and Mark Parrish, the middle school coordinator, who really give their hearts to the Science Fair every year. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful night.